All right, here I am in my office, and we're going to talk a little bit about MLA documentation. Again, a subject that I am grappling with currently because of some changes that have been made, and more importantly, some changes that have not been made with MLA documentation. So let's go ahead. We're going to get started. I'm going to do a little screen share for something that I think is a really good resource for y'all. And actually, let's go over to this. I think it's going to maybe correctly give us what we need, which is the Purdue Online Writing Lab MLA resource, which I think is a really good one-stop shop online. You don't necessarily need to buy the MLA guide. If you want to, of course, certainly you can. If you feel like you're going to be writing papers for multiple classes that would use MLA formats, that would be English and some humanities classes. And again, it is something that is kind of the go-to for the Writing Center. There's also APA style, which we'll talk about probably in a separate video here. But let's go ahead. If you look at the sample works cited page, I just want to show you this first and foremost. Again, when you are listing your sources in a paper, what you've used, anything that doesn't come from the inside of your own head, you should go ahead and you should organize them in this way. So with MLA documentation, there's two things that you're going to need to do on a paper. You're going to need to provide in-text citations for each of the quotes that you use in a paper, and quotes can be direct quotes or paraphrases. I will show you some pointers on that in a second, and some of the confusion therein that lies with the MLA style as it's currently constituted, and then the bibliography, which will have everything that you have worked on in the paper. And this is actually a pretty good example of a works cited page. Again, yours might not use this many sources, but I've certainly written papers that have used this and even more sources than this over the course of a paper. So again, sometimes those things do happen. The thing that I like about this is, first of all, just kind of models that you are actually putting things in alphabetical order for the most part by the author. Inconvenient Truth is a movie, and you're going to notice here A and the, which are again commonly occurring articles. Those do not factor in. So this is alphabetized by last name, except for, of course, this movie gets thrown in, and it's actually using the I in inconvenient to alphabetize, putting it between the H and the L here. With Nordhaus, you're going to notice here there are two articles by this author. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to want to pop both of those in there. And again, you're going to, in your citations, differentiate between a Nordhaus after Kyoto and Nordhaus global warming. You typically just need one word from the title. If they're different, after and global would work. But again, that's how you handle that if you have two articles by the same author that you are using in your paper and pulling quotes from. There are obviously a lot of online sources that are utilized, which of course is very important. Again, MLA, when it was created, I believe it was in the 1950s, it was designed to deal with texts and quotations and citations for those texts that would use again, page numbers from books and newspapers and magazines. That's typically how information got to researchers, people writing papers. Now, of course, things are much more electronic. For example, you have a URL. This is essentially a page number, right? So, but if you were to try to put that a citation, that would kind of break your formatting, and that would be really, really inconvenient and unwieldy. So what you want to do, and I'll show you this in a second here, is you're just going to, for our purposes, enter in the last name of the author. And again, that can be a little weird as well, because MLA will say in some instances you do that, in some instances you don't. It's not really clear in terms of what's going on. So we can talk about some alternatives here. But essentially, you're seeing where we can access these articles, right? So again, and this is kind of the point of having a works cited page and having citations. I mean, it's showing your work. I mean, that's first and foremost what it does. It allows me as your professor to see what you've researched, where your information has come from, how valid it is, right? Again, we're going to talk a little bit about crap test when we get into library orientation and we get into evaluating sources, right? Those things are very, very important. But also we are going to talk a little bit about, again, just the idea that with MLA and APA style both, if people are reading your paper and they want to get those sources and they want to know more about what you've researched, if they want to look at those sources themselves, then they have the tools in which to do that, right? So, and again, obviously with online sources, you're going to have the URLs. Sometimes URLs change, but you've got all this information too, just in case that happens. Obviously with books, you'll have publisher information that's part of that as well. UP, you'll see that as a shorthand in AP in MLA style. I think in APA style too. Anyway, this the UP, it's University and Press. That's very common. So if you see Cambridge UP, that's what that's about. And this is of course in 2003 is when that's published. With the online stuff, you want to say when it's accessed because you want to treat online publications like basically the website. You want to consider that as something that comes out daily. Of course it doesn't, but sometimes things will change. I mean, obviously websites will stay static for a while, and then lo and behold, someone will decide to do a redesign or take some information away or put some information in or change the whole site URL or something along those lines. And you'll have a slightly different version of that website or a markedly revamped version of that website, depending on what that is. So again, there's general kind of things that have been added on to MLA to try to accommodate those online sources, right? So again, that's something that's trying to do over time, but it's pretty imperfect. So let's go ahead. We're going to look at let's see, I'm going to stop share for a second so I can pull this up, and then we're going to reshare. So this is a sample from one of the articles that I had. So this is what a paper might look like, right? So what you would want to do typically in this case here in MLA style is, and again, this is where it differentiates because you're supposed to have a citation. And again, if this was a source that was a print source, because Orisoff's name is in the signal phrase, it will instruct you all you need to do is put in the page number. Of course, there are no page numbers that exist online, right? So except for, of course, I mean, the URL, you don't want to do the URL string. So my advice has generally been to just put the author's last name. And in some cases, MLA will tell you to do this. In other cases, it'll say you don't need that, but that contradicts the advice that it gives you that every quote should have a citation, right? That the name in the signal phrase is not enough. One thing that I have seen done, and I will go ahead and allow this in the class as well, if you want to do this option, is again, so this comes from paragraph 3 of the article as it is formatted, right? So, and again, with articles, there are going to be like standardized paragraph formatting, right? You don't want to use page numbers for what you print because obviously printers are different. And what might be your page 2 might be somebody's page 3. But I've seen this done through UT Austin, which they're calling MLA Plus. And if you want to have something where it talks about the location of where this quote is, and you've got the author's name and the signal phrase, then that is totally acceptable. MLA will also tell you that if you don't have the author's name in the signal phrase, if you're just kind of making a more general reference to who's writing that article, then you would need to put both the author name and the page number if it's a print source, and then the author name if it is obviously a if it is an online source. But my advice in writing papers is that you always want to have the author's name in the signal phrase. So this would be an acceptable version, or you can do just the last name like that. And again, MLA will tell you that you don't need this, but I'm going to tell you that you will, right? Kind of the last little note here about MLA style. and you're using it and adopting it in papers, is I reward good faith efforts. If you are making a reasonable effort to document sources and provide citations, if there's a little error here and there, that's usually not going to count markedly against you in papers. But of course, if you are not making the effort, if you are not providing citations at all, or you're not providing a bibliography at all, that is where things run into some issues, right? So again, remember everything that you quote, again, direct quotes or paraphrases, you want to try to make some effort to have a citation with it. And again, these options that I've given you for online sources are acceptable in my book. And then obviously you want to have a bibliography, right? So everything that you use in the paper, if you quote it once, if you quote it 4 times, if you quote it 6 times, those need to be accounted for in that works cited page, also known as bibliography, but again, works cited is the title that MLA style wants you to use. APA is a little bit different. APA uses years as well. So that is again a little bit easier to deal with online sources. I'm moving more and more towards wanting to adopt APA style, but APA also has some kind of specific things with headers and things like that, that again you're gonna encounter in one of the papers that you'll do this semester, because again we have this quantitative literacy requirement, and so we do those papers in APA style. But so far, for the most part, we have been defaulting to MLA because it is supposedly easier, but it is a little more confounding. So and continues to be so. And again, at the risk of sounding like an old guy, that's what really grinds my gears. I mean, it doesn't, but it sort of does anyway. So those are my thoughts on MLA. We can definitely take this to discussion board and or classroom as that applies to y'all. And I'm happy to talk more on this topic. All right. So have a good one. Yeah, let me know if there's any other questions. And again, that Purdue guide is a good place to get a lot of things answered. With the MLA, yeah, again, one more thing, because I can never stop talking about this. On MLA style for the works cited page, there will be some examples. There will be some things. Here's how books are treated. Here's how articles are treated. Here's how articles and databases are treated. In some cases, you do need to kind of Frankenstein them together. Again, there are also some online tools like NightSight is one that will help you build MLA bibliography entries if you plug the information in. Word has something built in as well if you're writing in Word, and will actually allow you to kind of auto-populate your citations, or at least you're able to click and put those in. So those tools are there. They're helpful. They're good, but you always want to kind of check that against the MLA guide just to make sure that you're putting forth your best faith effort in creating those bibliography entries. All right.